Welcome to IRO Live with host Bob Bay.
If you believe in God, if you believe there is a supreme God, then surely there must be some idea that there is a devil. We talked last week about the idea that in starting out that yes, there is things going on inside of us. The coping skills that we develop, the things that we use to numb the pain of having unmet needs, or the things we do to try to meet our own needs. You can go back in the podcast and you can learn about all of those things. And those are the things that go on inside of us. There are things that go on the outside of us in the spiritual realm that we don't understand many times, and we fight against it not knowing, and we beat ourselves up. We keep getting drawn back into these cycles and these patterns of behavior and doing these same things over and over again, expecting different results, not understanding that there are things at work against us. And so that's why we're doing this. We're trying to understand, what is it? What's going on that's trying to work against us, trying to draw us back into that? And so we want to stand against this. We see in the natural what the Bible describes as the natural world. We see this world the way it describes it in the natural, but happening at this exact same time, overlapped. We just can't see it. It doesn't mean it's out there. You know, when we talk about the spiritual realm, we're not talking about out there in heaven. That's the third heavens out there that Paul talks about. We're talking about the spiritual realm that is going on right now, where spiritual beings exist. It's where we would talk about angels being, where we would talk about demons being. And it's overlapped right here, happening right now in the exact same time. That's the way the Bible describes it. And so these forces that are at work against us, you know, in the Bible it talks about, and you see several stories that talk about people having these opportunities where their eyes were open to see the other side, to see these armies, angel armies and different things. The devil is a created being. He can't be everywhere at once. He's a fallen angel. And so there is a hierarchy. And that's what this is describing. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, and against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. That's the hierarchy of it. Just in simple terms, imagine an army. You've got a general at top, and then majors and colonels answer to the general. Lieutenants and captains answer to the majors. And then all of the enlisted are down below. And none of us are so powerful and have so much going on in our lives that we actually warrant the devil to come and mess with us. We ain't important enough for that. These spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places, that's talking about in the spiritual realm. Just like you hear people talking about, a guardian angel. There are actually spiritual beings whose job is to follow us around and find out what makes us tick. That's why there are certain things that will seemingly out of the blue come against us that we don't understand. How in the world? Why does it always end up that this type of person ends up coming into my life to derail me? Why is it that, I could be clean for 2 weeks and out of nowhere the dope man shows back up just when I'm at my weakest point? That's no accident that is happening. And that's what that all describes. That happening. Starting in January of 2023, I kind of lay all of this out from the Garden of Eden all the way up through the Exodus and everything. So let's go ahead and go on. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil days. And having done all to stand, stand therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness. We are all walking in some degree of the truth in our lives. We lie to ourselves all the time. People lie to us all the time. From this point going forward, we have to be willing. When it's talking about this, about girding ourselves up, when soldiers would go into the battle, they would gird up they wore these tunics and they would tighten these up so that they could fight. And they would gird that with the belt and tighten it so that they look like skirts. Back in the old biblical days, they looked like skirts. Well, they would tie that up so they wouldn't get in their way. And so that's what that's saying is, listen, you've got a battle coming. And this is the first thing you must do. You have to stand in truth. For me, I was a meth addict, alcoholic. And if you ask me then at that time, anything bad that happened to me or anything that went the way I didn't want, it was always somebody else's fault. I could always find a reason why it wasn't my fault that things the way they were. My boss was too mean to me. Pam didn't treat me right. This, that. There was always something to where I can make it not be my fault. I was not walking in truth. Then after it got to where I stopped blaming other people, I started blaming. If you hang around long enough, you'll realize that I'm kind of walking in an ADD mode. I'm all over the place. Then I realized that I did struggle with ADD, attention deficit disorder. I struggled with it then. I celebrate it now. But I struggled with it, and I blamed everything on that. Well, yeah, it's not my fault. It's just the way I am. It's not my fault. And even going into as far as the addiction went, even after the drugs and alcohol were no longer an issue in my life, for that first many years of my recovery, well, I'm just an addict. I can't help it. That's just the way my brain works. That's just the way my brain works. I can't help it. I do these impulsive, stupid things because I'm an addict. I spend money that should be spent on bills, on power tools, because that's my addictive nature. That's a lie. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have those things that we struggle with. It's not making me do that. That's saying the devil made me do it. That's the same thing. That's baloney. The reality of it is that I felt a way I didn't want to feel, and I used those choices to try and make myself not feel the way I felt, or to make myself feel better so I wouldn't feel the way I was feeling. That's just the truth of it. I was either numbing the pain or trying to bring pleasure of some kind, chemical or whatever kind of pleasure of some kind, so I didn't feel the pain. That's just the way it was. And until I was willing to step back and say, this is the truth of it. This is the truth of it. It's nobody's fault. Nobody's fault on the choices I made. I made the choices. Nobody was holding a gun to my head to make me make the choices I made. I'm where I'm at today because of the choices I've made. Now, did I have a fair childhood? I struggled with some things through childhood. I struggled with some things when I was in the military. I went through things in Central America that caused problems in my heart. I went through struggles with different things in addiction. And I faced situations in my addiction that created troubles in me. Did they help me? No, they hurt me. They created problems for me. But I was still responsible for the choices. Still. And so it starts at truth. We have to be willing to be honest with ourselves. And in AA, they talk about, I'm going to paraphrase this unfortunate group of people who are incapable of being honest with themselves. And recovery will not happen for them. If you're incapable of being honest with yourself, you will not be able to walk in recovery, because that's the foundation of it. And that's what the foundation of this is. When it says we're wrestling not against flesh and blood, there is a component of us and the choices we're making. But there are things coming against us. It's not other people's fault, it's spiritual things. And so we start out with truth. The next part is putting on the breastplate of righteousness. And what does that mean? Paul is talking about this in Ephesians 6. He's talking about this armor. It's a protection. The reason why we need to put on this armor is so that we can stand against the wiles of the devil, so that we can stand against the things that are going on. These are defensive things. So first, we walk in truth. We have to be able to be honest with ourselves. We have to be able to be honest with ourselves and where we're at. We have to be able to look all the way up until probably about a month before I quit doing drugs. All I thought was, listen, what is the big deal? I work hard. All I want to do is come home, drink some beers, have a little bit of fun. And if I want to do a little bit of meth now and then, what's the big deal? And if I need to smoke a little bit of weed to knock the edge off, what's the problem? I'm just having fun. Spent all my money, stole everything I could steal, borrowed and everything I could borrow, lied more times than I can count, had no money, behind on all my bills, everything. Pam ready to leave me and take my family away. All of that going on. If Pam would just get off my back about shooting meth, it wouldn't be such a big problem. See what I'm saying? That's being truth. But so this is what ends up happening. Whether you deal with substance abuse, you deal with depression, you deal with anxiety, PTSD, whether or not you're an abuse survivor, a molestation survivor, any of that. What ends up happening is our heart, who we are, our heart gets injured. It gets wounded. When I'm talking about we do things to numb the pain, it's that pain of having a wounded heart. Sometimes we're emotionally neglected when we're growing up. Sometimes the people that we're supposed to be able to trust and that we count on to watch out for us and love us don't. Why? Because they're watching out for themselves. I'm not trying to blame my mom and dad for what's going on in their lives. They never learned it. They didn't have it. So how are they going to pass it on to me? So all of that's going on. Our hearts get wounded. Our hearts get broken. It needs to be able to mend. We need to have something that protects our heart from the things, from the issues of life. In Proverbs chapter 4, verse 24 or 28, somewhere in there, it says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. If you're going to have issues in your life, it's going to be because of these things that have broken and damaged your heart. In Matthew in chapter 12, and it talks about it also in chapter 15, it talks about your heart. Out of the mouth comes the abundance of the heart. So when we have these problems in our heart, when our heart has been damaged and it's wounded, it opens us up to make choices we shouldn't make. Here's an example from out of my life. I struggled with fear of rejection because of things happening when I grew up. I felt like I would be left alone. I would be alone and unloved. And so Pam and I get married, and because of that fear of rejection here, I was always trying to do things to make her happy. But here lies the problem. I was trying to do things that I thought would make her happy based out of who I was and the problems in my life. That wasn't what she needed to make her happy. And then when she wouldn't react the way I expected her to, it would hurt me even more and create more problems with me, so I would make even worse decisions. See, there's one example. Here's another thing. I also struggled with approval seeking. I had a very low self-esteem. Remember me talking in the beginning about we all have built in us a need for significance. We all need to know that we matter and that we are significant in who we are. We have a purpose and a meaning in our life above just the mundane. It was created within us. But after the fall and the separation from God, it ended up we try and earn the counterfeit, which is the pride of life that the devil offers us. And that's how we try and gain that significance. And so I had this issue where I was needing significance in my life. And so I would overwork, overachieve to get these rewards, to make people happy, to get patted on the back, tell me, you're doing a good job, Bob, you're doing a good job. And when I wouldn't get it, I would feel starved. And what that ended up doing for me is I advanced. I was in the Army. I was an E5 in the Army, in the position of what an E7 should be in, doing a job that I was not really qualified for, but I had overworked my way into it. And so then what did I have to do? Anytime somebody said something, I was on the defensive. If you told me I wasn't doing something right, you better watch out. I would be back in your face, blaming it on all kinds of things other than me. Very defensive. You hear what I'm saying? If somebody disrespected me, I walked around for 10 years looking for a fight. If somebody disrespected me, said something in the wrong way, I didn't care how big you were, I'd be in your face. It's a wonder I didn't get killed. All because of my lack of significance, of my feeling like I was insignificant. And where does that lie? That lies in our heart. And that's where the breastplate of righteousness comes. Now, why does that make it? White as the righteousness. Righteousness, in simple terms, is that's right standing with God. In and of ourselves, we can't be righteous, but because of Jesus' death on the cross, he is our righteousness. It is given to us. And because of that, we are accepted, we are restored back to the Father God, and we are seen through Jesus' righteousness that protects us. And so that when people say, Bob, you really messed that up, because I'm finding my significance in Christ. And I know that I'm more than enough in him. I'm able to say, well, you know what? Maybe it wasn't good enough for you. That I get that. I'll try harder next time. I'll do my best. But my value's not based on that. You know, I'm in remodeling, and I had one job where I was laying tile. I was doing like these triangles and diamonds and squares, doing this border pattern around an island. And the homeowner came in, and she saw it before it was grouted. And she was just like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. This is awful. This looks like a kindergartner did this. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And I could feel it rising up in me. And I even kind of got a little bit loud with her at first. And then I felt the peace of God come upon me. I was becoming more mature. God was doing things in me. And so I was able then to say, well, I understand that's the way it looks now, because you're seeing all the cracks and crevices and everything, and you see that edge of that tile that's been cut. But just wait till it's grouted. Once it's grouted, you won't see all of that, and it'll look completely different. It'll be all cleaned up. And I said, listen, if it's not just the way you want it when it's done, I'll redo it. And so her husband talked to her and said, let's let him do it. And if it's not right, then we'll either not pay him or he'll redo it. And they ended up loving it. Once it was grouted, it was wonderful. That's where I came from. But because God has done a work in my life, and he's placed that righteousness over my heart, people can say things. And you know what? I'm not perfect. There's still times where Pam will say something to me in a certain tone of voice. I still struggle sometimes. But I'm quickly able to step back. Sometimes I have to walk away. Sometimes I say, I can't talk about this right now. I know I use Pam and I for an example all the time, but my thing lately is when we have these discussions. When I get hurt by something, when something hurts me, I want to wall off. That's my self-defense mechanism. I kind of pull back and I want to wall off. I like pull away from people because I learned that that's how you protect yourself. You can't build relationships by pulling back and walling off. And so what I have to do is I'll come and I'll shake Pam's hand. I know she's my wife. We've been married for 38 years. Let me shake your hand. That's my way of reaching out. I'm in a safe distance. Okay, I'm reaching out. But I have to try, right? I can't try and protect my own heart. If I try and protect my own heart, I will be alone. Believe me, you guys see me today. If you'd seen me 20 years ago, if I tried to take care of business my way, I wouldn't have made it. That's just all there is to it. I wouldn't have made it. Breastplate of righteousness. That's the only way we're going to be protected. That's the only way our heart will be guarded. That's the only way. Life can be a challenge. But if we understand that God is on our side and he wants to protect us, he has given us these tools, these things to protect us. And we're going to learn more about the shield and about the helmet and about the shoes in the next couple of weeks, so that we can stand against this. We're not alone. God doesn't want us to have to try and do this on our own and just try and work up the willpower. Well, if I should just be stronger. I should just not let these things bother me. I should just be able to overcome this. I said for the longest time, I don't know why I let this bother me so bad. I should just be able to overcome this. I should just be able to rise above this. That's terrible. That's like jumping off a building and flapping my arms and saying, I should just be able to fly. Why not just get in an airplane? They fly really well. Why do I got to try and do it myself? And that's what it's like with God. We can just get in the airplane. That's all we got to do is just ride along.
Thanks for listening. Please comment and subscribe for upcoming podcasts. To order your copy of My Real Life, go to the Take Action page at our website, reallifeministries-stl.com, or go to Real Life Ministries STL on Facebook.